Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson. For over 50 years, Delta Dental of New Jersey has been committed to educating the public about the importance of good oral health and its role in our overall health and well-being. That's why we're proud to support the important healthcare programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. Seton Hall University, where leaders learn. The Northward Center. NJM Insurance Group. The New Jersey Education Association, and by New Jersey Resources. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media and by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey.
Welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio in Brick City, Newark, New Jersey. It's our honor to introduce, joining us for the first time, Dr. Clenton Coleman. He's affiliated with Holy Name Medical Center, and your area of expertise is?
Internal medicine and nephrology, which is kidney disease and high blood pressure.
But you're also very aware of, concerned about, and want to talk about the fact that race and healthcare directly related. How so?
With the United States, there's been some history of mistrust in the healthcare system. We know that black males as a demographic have the lowest life expectancy of any major demographic group. They're more likely to develop cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure. And these are all preventable diseases. And they're also less likely to be involved in the organ donation process. The reasons for that are many. Partly it's education, lack of access to health care, or mistrust of the healthcare system. So, there's been a lot of race issues, and as we know, race issues in society have always paralleled race issues in healthcare, which has led to a mistrust of the healthcare system.
Let's break this down a little bit. We were talking before we got on the air. 13% of the population,
right,
African American. 4%,
yes,
of all physicians African American.
Right.
Why is that relevant?
It's extremely important.
By the way, why is the number so low?
Well, there's many reasons, right? And
sorry for asking two questions at once. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I preface to say that getting into medical school is difficult for everyone, right? So medical schools, as we know, have been segregated into the late 1960s. So with that, there's been a late start, and there's only been a few institutions that accepted black students to go into medical school.
Right.
There's also been cuts in medical education financing. Medical school is really expensive, so most students leave with about $200,000 in debt. Also, there have been shifts away from minority health programs and affirmative action. So these young, talented black children aren't able to go through medical school.
Opportunities aren't there.
Exactly, for many reasons.
So a black patient who happens to be African American, he or she, and by the way, is it more African American men that are distrustful, if you will?
Definitely.
And would all things being quote unquote equal,
right,
big leap, big question, would rather have a doctor of color?
Definitely.
Because?
There's some studies that show that black males feel more comfortable when they're taken care of by a black physician. They feel more comfortable. They're more likely to comply with preventative care. And that, the disparity that we talked about earlier, is reduced by almost 20%. So it's a big deal. And not necessarily a black or white thing. I just think patients overall feel comfortable with the doctor, what they can relate to. They speak the same language. There's more trust, there's better communication, and less bias on both sides.
That's why it's important to have diversity in a medical staff.
Definitely.
Now, to go back to something you said before, we work with the Sharing Network in the state of New Jersey in promoting public awareness around organ and tissue donation.
Yeah.
You said that the numbers of those who happen to be African American who are willing to say, yes, I will be an organ donor, is not what it should be.
Right.
Because?
Well, I think organ donation, it's on the same spectrum as, this mistrust of the healthcare system on the part of black patients. There's two types of, I guess when you think of it two ways, there's a recipient and there's a donor. So, you're thinking from the perspective of someone who feels like they've been taken advantage of systemically. Why would they want to give their organ to a system that, they've really not gotten back much from? The recipient part of it is, there's clinical decision-making bias for certain diseases, meaning depending on your race, gender, or socioeconomic status, you're likely to receive less aggressive care. So, for example, I'm a kidney doctor. Black patients are more likely to receive dialysis as opposed to a kidney. They're also less likely to accept a kidney because they don't trust the system.
Less likely if they've been waiting, they've been on the list 3 years,
Right.
Less likely to accept a kidney.
Well, they don't even want to get on the list because they feel like they don't, deserve it or what have you.
Are you, to what degree are you constantly talking to patients who happen to be African American and trying to talk through these issues with them?
There's a lot of cultural bias that we have to, so we need culturally competent providers to address
Define
this.
what that means. Say someone's not African American,
Right.
But being culturally competent, not just in dealing with a patient who happens to be African American, someone who is Hispanic, someone who's Asian, someone comes from whatever part of the world, because we're such a diverse community.
We have to understand why patients do what they do. There's some background information, or there's a cultural. So, for example, nutrition is a real cultural basis. So, if, soul food, is common in the Black community and is not the healthiest food. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Also, lifestyle changes like exercising, and that's not necessarily the coolest thing to do, but, we're trying to change that dynamic and that thought process that, being healthy, does mean eating better and taking care of yourself. One
more thing I'm curious about. The Affordable Care Act, a lot of political discussion in Washington around it. If the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, were to be repealed in a significant way, you have argued that it would disproportionately impact the African American community because?
Well, definitely. So the Affordable Care Act, there's more patients of different demographic groups who, socioeconomic status, who can't afford health care. They have more access to health care. If you repeal that, if you take that insurance away, then those set of patients won't be able to receive the care that they probably deserve.
Final question. By the way, speaking with Dr. Clenton Coleman from Holy Name Medical Center, I'm curious about this. You got into medicine because?
I like helping patients. I think that's the most basic thing you can do to help people, right? It doesn't boil down to anything. That's all we have is our bodies. So I think for me to give back to the community and help patients at an individual basis, that's what I live for.
And not understand the connection between medicine, healthcare, race, and racism is a mistake, is it not? Short-sighted.
We underestimate, race as it relates to healthcare system. You have the glaring examples like the Tuskegee experiment and gynecology surgeries on women without anesthesia. But there's so many other reasons for the development of this mistrust that we have to work to undo that damage.
Doctor, we thank you for being with us and talking about such an incredibly important issue. All the best.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Stay right there. This is Steve Adubato. I'll be right back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
I recently moderated a forum hosted by Choose New Jersey on a new federal initiative. It's called Opportunity Zones. Now, this is a program looking to spur economic investment in communities throughout the country. Many of those communities are, in fact, right here in New Jersey. On the panel, we had 4 experts in economic development, real estate, and, of course, opportunity zones. Here now are those interviews. Chris, let me ask you, we just did this forum where in Newark, New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, in fact, put this event together with Governor Murphy and United States Senator Cory Booker talking about opportunity zones. Briefly, if you were to describe to someone who never heard of opportunity zones, how would you briefly, succinctly, but effectively describe them?
Is a private sector tool to do community economic development by identifying specific locations to incentivize private investors to create new jobs, create new mixed-use development, and to amplify quality of life.
How?
By simply giving investors something that they hadn't had before to invest in distressed communities, and that is a tax incentive. If an investor has money in Google or land property, if they actually sold those investments, because we understand the return on investment of that, if they actually said, you know what, I can sell this, but I can't invest in a local community because the tax and the numbers don't work, well, this program provides that incentive by giving them both a tax deduction as well as a potential opportunity to make even more money off that initial investment.
To those who say, come on, is New Jersey that great a place to do business, you say?
Absolutely, and here's why. The way this program is designed is going to require investors to find projects that actually
Opportunity zones.
Opportunity zone projects and locations that actually can produce a profit. At the end of the day, the investors are not just putting this money in as charity. This is not a charitable contribution.
They're not just trying to do the right thing.
Exactly. This is, hey, how can I make a buck? But actually doing it in a way that actually is targeted to communities that need the resources the most. And let me tell you, based on the survey of interviews that we've done with our membership across the country, we're finding that communities that have transit access, that have a strong employment base, and have a diverse economy are probably at the top of the list. And guess what? New Jersey is one of the top of the states where people are looking because they know right now the market is demanding for walkable urban places. There's a need for mixed-use income.
How about our workforce?
You have many great universities, and as well as you have a very vibrant small business incubator space that are tied to University of Rutgers and many other institutions here. That is your attribute.
Thank you, Chris.
Hey, thank you for having me.
These opportunity zones, what could they mean for a distressed school district, a distressed community struggling to get its sea legs when it comes to economic development?
I mean, I think it finally just means the way out. It's a transformative opportunity to actually allow them to finally exit financial distress, to be like the Newark people remember from 60 years ago. This is one of the tools, and probably the best tool in a long time, to just structurally change the economy such that these cities become the centers of their communities again.
Why is that, Evan? What's in it that makes it? Because there have been other federal initiatives, other federal-state relationships or collaborations that were supposed to make a big difference. What do you think is different here?
So this is just changing the framework of the economy. That's what's unique about it. It's not a new program. It's not something you have to talk to a bureaucrat about to figure out. It's something that's private sector driven and is going to be something that allows for the investors to make the decision as opposed to a bureaucrat making the decision. That's what's categorically different about it.
What advice would you have for urban communities, leaders who may be thinking about this and say, it's hard to deal with the federal government, state government, bureaucracy, it's tough, you say?
I think it's not tough. The first thing is just to recognize that this is something you can really get your arms around. If you're a city like Newark or Paterson, you're larger, dedicate a staff member to it. If you're a smaller community, like a lot of the ones in South Jersey, band together and try to get enough expertise around it to really participate and just start packaging your projects. I mean, Newark alone has hundreds of projects that this could work for. And so it's just figuring out what they are and then getting to investors.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Margaret, you know an awful lot about investing. You make tough decisions about where to invest, why you invest. This particular initiative, this federal initiative that Senator Booker was talking about earlier, that the governor was talking about as well, why is it so important?
It's so important because the communities that were selected, and not just the ones that were chosen in New Jersey, but all around the country, are desperately in need of capital. These are places where there are high levels of poverty. It's not getting the private capital they need, and yet at the same time, there are great businesses, there are great projects, there are great opportunities in these communities.
So it's opportunity zones.
Opportunity zones. So these zones, and really this legislation around these zones, is going to be great to encourage the private capital back into those distressed communities that really need it.
It's interesting, you and your colleagues at Goldman, you got to make tough choices, right? You got to say, you pick and choose, you say no to some. What are some of the things that you would be looking for? Like say, we're in Newark, we're taping in Newark at Rutgers, part of the Rutgers campus here in Newark. In a city like Newark, or Jersey City, or Paterson, or Camden, et cetera, what would you be looking for? What are some of the better or best practices?
Yeah, so Newark's a great example. So Newark's a place where we've already made 22 investments, and what's really drawn us to Newark is a few things. It has great fundamentals. It's part of a very strong regional economy, great corporate anchors, excellent transit, great location within just a regional transportation network, and we've had really strong partners on the ground, both in the private real estate development community, but also our public sector partners in City Hall, in the Economic Development Office. So we have local stakeholders really driving us to the projects that are going to be the most impactful, and the actual partners on the ground to get it done.
Let's break down opportunity zones just a little bit. Steve, are we basically saying that if an organization makes an investment in a community, an identified community, and they stay there for X amount of time and have significant impact on improving the community, what happens as it relates to capital gains taxes that are supposed to be paid to the federal government?
Yeah, so two parts of incentives in this program. The longer you hold an investment in a community as an investor, the better the incentive. So at the beginning, you get an incentive on the capital you roll into the program. That's capital you would have ordinarily had to pay taxes on day one. Now you don't have to pay those taxes until the end of 2026. And when you do, if you held it for long enough, at least 7 years, you get a 15% discount on that tax bill. The second incentive is much bigger. If you invest in a fund that's investing in these communities and you hold your stake for 10 years or more, and you earn money on that investment over that 10 years, that new gain is tax-free. And so it's a huge incentive to really change the mindset of where investors are looking at their next potential investment.
You know what's interesting about this? Again, it's interesting talking about two United States senators, one Democrat, one Republican, both agree on this. It is rare that Democrats and Republicans in Washington agree on anything and get something done together. So what does that say, not only about the senators who did this, particularly Senator Booker here in New Jersey, but opportunity zones? What is it that brings folks together?
Well, you're totally right that it's rare. It was maybe the only really bipartisan piece of tax reform, which obviously has been pretty controversial.
This was, in fact, opportunity zones, part of the 2017 federal tax law changes.
That's right, passed at the end of last year, and a lot of people didn't know about it until recently because of events like these. You know, Senator Booker and Senator Scott have worked together on a lot of issues. They work together on apprenticeships, they work together on criminal justice reform, they work together on this. So they're unique in senators and finding a partnership to work across the aisle. But listen, I think more and more, and the 2016 election is a great example of that. People are really angry. They're concerned that this story we have in the country that 4% unemployment and record growth and we fixed everything is not the story of a huge chunk of Americans that live in communities that didn't feel any of that. And more our politics are catching up with that reality. And arguably the election of Donald Trump was one of those data points. And I think the fact that this bill passed and got 100 members of Congress from all across the spectrum to support it means that this is something that's penetrating more and more even in Washington.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're laughing because we're old friends. Well, I'm old. He's not. He's Gordon MacInnes, and he's president, New Jersey Policy Perspective. Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you, Steve.
Now, you're a former state senator. You formerly headed up public broadcasting in the state of New Jersey, and you've done a whole bunch of other things. Now, why, when you're at the top of your game, are you deciding to step down from this role?
Well, the world has changed, number one. So I like to deal with the people, not just at the top who are making the decisions in Jersey, but the people who work for them. And I've found that the people who work with me have very good relations with the staff, the senior staffs in the legislature and in the executive branch. That's important for the work that we do.
Describe New Jersey Policy Perspective. What is and why does it matter as we put up the website, Gordon?
Okay, well, it matters because this is a, if you will, a think and do tank. We put out reports.
Not just think.
Not just think. We put out reports. They're footnoted. They have graphics. But we're there to try and influence what happens in New Jersey, particularly when it comes to policymaking. And we have a point of view that we take every time, which is to take a progressive point of view, to say New Jersey has got problems. Here's the problem. It needs to answer those problems, and here's what it will take. Frequently, it involves something that most political figures do not want to hear about.
For example?
Well, New Jersey is now at the bottom of the list of states in terms of its credit rating. It's at the bottom of the list in terms of its capacity to deal with investment in its assets. I mean, we've got a great place among the 50 states. Location is one of them. But if we do not maintain the opportunities for affordable higher education, if we can't put New Jersey Transit back to work on a regular schedule, if we cannot invest in those things which make us a particularly strong state and attract people who are well educated, who want to get good jobs, who need to get access to New York and Philadelphia, our future is grim. And that's where we are right now.
But Gordon, no one's going to disagree with the conceptual aspects of what you just said. By the way, we're speaking with Gordon MacInnes, President, New Jersey Policy Perspective, former state senator in the state of New Jersey. By the way, go way, way back in our day, this organization, we did a documentary on how legislation and how the legislature should work. We did it with Senator Gordon MacInnes and Rich Bagger, who served in the Assembly as well, and it's one of my favorite things we've ever done because it showed how it really should be done by people who may disagree on policy but are not disagreeable with each other. That being said, a lot of what you talk about talks about taxes, tax fairness. There are some who believe that New Jersey is not a state that you can afford to live in anymore. We're losing a lot of residents with dollars to Florida, where there is no income tax, to Pennsylvania, where the income tax, I think, is 3%. Ours is 9-ish, if you will, and to New York and other places. You say what to those who say Gordon MacInnes and some of his friends want to raise New Jersey state income tax to do a lot of the things you just said? Long-winded question, but I know you have the answer.
Well, first of all, we have a high tax rate compared to most states. You mentioned New York. That's the second state for when people leave New Jersey. That's where they go. And they largely go to New York City, where the taxes are much higher than they are in New Jersey. Why are they higher?
No, why do we lose them?
We lose them because New York City has benefits that we can't match in terms of everything.
Being
that
New York City.
Yeah, being New York City. So what we have are the assets that draw people who want to be in the center of business and finance and everything else. And they want to live here. And the cost of that is, think about it. We've got 9 million people living in the 7th smallest state in the union. We have the highest number of residents per square mile of any state, and whoever's in second isn't even close. And there's a reason for that. And location, access to New York, access to Philadelphia, access to the Northeast, that's all a part of it. We need
Senator, excuse me, Gordon, still Senator MacInnes, you still have advocated that we should raise taxes on millionaires. And the negotiation that took place between Governor Murphy and some in the legislature, particularly Senate President Sweeney, was that they wouldn't raise taxes on millionaires. They would raise it on those who earned $5 million or more. You don't like that. You think it should have been on millionaires.
Yes.
What about if we lost those folks?
We don't. All right, we do. Yes, everybody has a story.
Yes, anecdotally, but statistically.
Statistically, the number of people who earn at least $1 million a year and pay taxes on those earnings, that number has been rising steadily since the Great Recession.
Right, of 2008-9.
Right. So, in fact, people are still here, even though taxes on their $1 million plus are higher than they would be if they were in Iowa or in Wyoming.
Why tempt fate by raising it?
Because the record is that if we do not, we don't have the revenues that we need to invest in the assets that make New Jersey an enviable place.
We need that
to be.
revenue.
We need the revenue.
Do you think that the middle, policy perspective, your organization came out with this, it was a good one. Who pays analysis released the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy. You found that families with annual incomes of $40,000 to $80,000 pay way more than their fair share of taxes.
Right.
Talk about it.
Okay, so here's what we have. When you take all the taxes in place, property taxes, or the property taxes that renters have to pay.
This is after a $10,000 cap with the federal government on state and local taxes, but go ahead.
Right, we have a sales tax. When you take those taxes, property and sales tax, those affect people in the middle a lot more than they affect people at the top.
That's right, because they pay the same amount.
They pay the same amount on whatever they're buying, and they're not buying Aston Martins or Lamborghinis.
They're buying coats. They're buying, and they're coats. Are they included or not?
No,
I got that wrong. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No sales tax on clothing, but in fact, things that they need every day they buy, and there's
refrigerator.
Refrigerator, they pay a tax.
And so someone who's making $1 million, someone who's making $45,000 are paying the same thing.
Exactly right.
Not fair?
And their refrigerator may be more modest if they're making $45,000 a year.
But conceptually, not fair.
Not fair. Not fair. And so we need to catch up. And we need to make this a place where people who are in the middle and who are struggling, because this is a high-cost place. There is no place else where the property taxes are higher. There are very few places where the cost of a residence is higher. So all of that is necessary if you're raising a family, but we give you this benefit. If you're raising a family in New Jersey, you're going to the public schools. public schools that are second best in the nation, only Massachusetts kids do better on the national test than New Jersey kids. And that's a great magnet.
It's a good deal. Before I let you out of here, by the way, it shows how much I know that I thought clothing was sales tax.
Yeah.
Now, leave it alone, all right? Edit that out. Before I let you go, you've always been someone, as I said, we did that documentary on you and Rich Bagger, civil, respectful, regardless of how people disagree on issues. The tone and tenor of political discourse in our nation, 30 seconds or less.
Oh my God. We've never seen anything like it. And we've never seen anything like it because we have a president who behaves in a way that no previous president has behaved. And that person has set in motion all sorts of things that do great damage, particularly to places like New Jersey, but to the entire nation.
Gordon MacInnes, who was a former senator, but after a few years is leaving as president, New Jersey policy perspective, he continues to make his mark in this state. And I want to thank you for your service. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Steve.
All the best.
Pleasure to be here.
This is State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. Let's continue the conversation on Twitter at Steve Adubato, and I promise we'll see you next week. Thanks.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Seton Hall University, the Northward Center, NJM Insurance Group, the New Jersey Education Association, and by New Jersey Resources.
I could feel my lungs fill with oxygen, and I got my life back.
The Sharing Network means to me hope, life, and everything.
The Sharing Network was a lifeline to me when I really needed it.
We are an organ procurement organization.
The core purpose of the New Jersey Sharing Network is to save and enhance lives.
To honor those who gave.
Pay tribute to those who received.
Offer hope to those who continue to wait.
And remember the lives lost while waiting.
For the gift of life.